SDPB serves South Dakota through an interconnected communication system that is on 24/7, 365. The first place for Amber Alerts, public safety announcements, and EAS messages. SDPB keeps public servants and citizens informed. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota Legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.
The meeting of the House Commerce and Energy Committee is now called to order. Welcome to everyone who is joining us in the room today and everyone that is listening online. Please, a reminder to turn your cell phones to silent. Lobbyists, a reminder to be wearing your badges for your respective organization. Testifiers, please sign the guest register, and Pages will distribute any handouts that you might have. Also a reminder, all testimony and questions will be directed through the chair. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representatives Elward, excused. Duffy?
Aye.
Greenfield? Aye. Kaiser?
Aye.
Mullally?
Present.
Knowles?
Here.
Peterson, excused. Schwanz?
Here.
Shorma?
Here.
Uribalk?
Here.
Weisgram?
Here.
Baumler?
Here.
And Lems.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Representative Greenfield, second by Representative Knowles. All in favor say aye. Oppose, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, we are going to invite our pages that are in the room to come forward. Give us your name, where you're from, your year in school, and your future plans. Who wants to go first? Welcome.
Hi, my name is Raquel Mitzel-Kelp. I'm from Holven, South Dakota. I'm a senior in high school, and my future plans is to go to Lake Area Tech for dental assisting.
Very good. Mr. Wangsness. welcome to you.
My name is Ben Wangsness. I am from Miller, South Dakota. I am a senior in high school, and my future plans are to attend Iowa State University for meteorology and hopefully a minor in agronomy.
Who's your favorite former legislator?
I think you know the answer to that. I like the study of like the crops and like the soil and like how to pretty much, yeah.
All right, very good. Do we have anybody with personal privilege today in the committee? I have a personal privilege. I would like to introduce my husband Galen and my son Jay, and give us a wave, guys, and welcome. All right, with that, we are going to move into our first bill. Just so you know, I know we have a lot of people testifying today. I think we have 14 so far that are for, and I think they're in the room. So I'll go to those in the room first, and then if there's somebody online, I will go to them. And if you have testified prior and you're basically saying the same thing that somebody before you said, you don't need to repeat it all, add what you want, or give a me too to be on the record. And I also am going to give the proponent 20 minutes, and we will give the opponents 20 minutes. So first on our agenda today is Senate Bill 36, authorize utilities to establish wildfire mitigation plans and associated liability limitations for wildfire damages.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Representative Tim Goodwin. I come to you from District 30. We're here this morning to talk about Senate Bill 36, a bill that lets utilities establish wildfire mitigation plans and be protected from some liability if they do so. When my local utilities asked for my help of this bill, I said I'd be honored to do it. I live in the Black Hills. In fact, I might be the only legislator that actually lives in the forest. I don't live in town. I live in the forest. I remember when I first got here 10 years ago, on my name tag, they had Rapid City. Well, I'm a rural guy, and really the guys in Custer and Hot Springs probably aren't going to think, well, he lives in Rapid City, because I don't. And so I said, well, I don't live in town. And they said, well, what town do you live in? And I said, well, I don't live in town. And the lady says, well, you have to live in a town. I thought, in South Dakota, really? So I live in the forest. Anything we can do to stop fires is a good thing. And anytime we can do it to keep our utilities alive and in good standing is also a good thing. So, Madam Chair, with your permission, I'd like to ask you to support two amendments. Both are posted on the LRC websites. They're amendments D and E. And for some reason, E was a bugger to get posted, but I think I finally got it. It was on, is it on there? Okay. Because it was on issued on a preliminary, then I had to do it again for some reason.
Yes, so we need a motion to move the amendment. There's two amendments, D and E. So hold on just 1 second. So first of all, I'm looking for a motion to move Amendment D. All right, we have a motion to move Amendment D by Representative Shorma, second by Representative Weisgram.
Madam Chair.
We need to take a quick recess before we move on. He's just looking at something between the two amendments.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Okay, I'm going to call back to order.
Yeah.
Representative, go ahead.
Yeah, my understanding is the provisions in D are included with E, so they're all together, so we just have to approve E.
Just E. All right, so we need to do
Find
substitute.
my motion to Amendment E.
All right, so we have a motion to move Amendment E. Do we have a second? We have a second from Representative Weisgram. All right, so this would be a voice vote to move amendment. Representative Mullally.
Thank you. Did he withdraw his first motion to? So you amended the motion, not withdrew. All right, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, we're getting in the weeds here. Hold on. So, just so the committee knows, we have a motion to move Amendment E, and we have a second on that motion. This will be a voice vote on Amendment E. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Amendment passes. Representative, go ahead on Amendment E.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and Committee. I know that everyone involved in this issue has been trying to come up with some sort of agreement, but I believe this amendment gets that done. The group behind me will give you more details, and I just want to get a little into the final form so we can talk about it. Thank you, and with your permission, I'd yield to Senator Steve Kolbeck as the prime of this and let him take this forward. With your permission, Madam Chair.
Representative or Senator Kolbeck, welcome.
Thank you very much. Steve Kolbeck, Senator District 2, Brandon, South Dakota. Just very quickly, I just wanted to give you kind of how we got here. So Senate Bill 36 is a bill about saving electric utility ratepayer money. So how do we save money? That's by cutting costs and overhead. Anyone who knows a business knows that expenses of business is no different than a cattle operation or a local gas station or a utility. So it's about saving insurance costs. And I'm very, very happy with all of the folks that came together to get this. When we got it out of the Senate, one of the biggest questions was why? Why give them a break, right? So if you look in SDCL 299, you can see where licensed practitioners, immunity, civil immunity for emergency use or non-use of an AED, landowners, tenants, leasees, all have a ceiling set on liability, and that's what this does. So then we ask the question, why electric utilities? And the question to that is because utilities have to serve their customers. They don't have a choice, and they don't have the right to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Landowner, clean up your land. This is a wildfire risk, and we need you to try to dampen that risk. Right now in South Dakota, it's February, and we are in a red flag warning for wildfire. So this is something that's new to us probably in the last 10 or 15 years, and it's something that we have to deal with. Because of that, because we must serve everyone who wants electricity, they have to give them the ability to have it. We cannot just keep all of that risk as low as we would like to. So in this bill, electric utilities are asking that we have the ability to make people whole, pay for all the damages, but have some protection under the law if we follow a plan to eliminate the hazards and dangers that the utility can control. And with that, that's kind of like how we got here and why, and then we'll move on to Ms. Rogers will walk you through the bill.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Further proponent testimony? Welcome, Ms. Rogers.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the House Commerce and Energy Committee. My name is Darla Pullman Rogers, and I'm a registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Rural Electric Association. SDREA is a nonprofit association whose members include 27 electric distribution co-ops located across the state, as well as 3 generation and transmission cooperatives. And we rise today in strong support of Senate Bill 36 as amended with Senate Bill 36E. So by way of background, I'll just advise you that our association has been actively engaged in discussions on wildfire mitigation legislation for over the past 2 years. We've worked diligently with our colleagues, the investor-owned utilities, or IOUs, with other stakeholders, including the PUC, to help finalize the bill that you have before you today. And I would also note that we are not reinventing the wheel. We've had the luxury of drawing upon wildfire mitigation legislation that has been adopted by some of our neighboring states, including Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, just to name a few. So the goal of this bill, as Senator Colbeck said, is to help reduce the risk of devastating wildfires, at the same time minimizing wildfire risk by setting forth the standards that apply to utilities and also that apply in civil actions to recover wildfire-related damages. So I would like to take just a moment to walk you through the provisions of the bill. Section 1 is a definition section. The only thing I would point out in this section is that each electric utility is governed by separate bodies, and so the commission has governance or jurisdiction over the IOUs. It's our board of directors that has jurisdiction over the cooperatives, and of course it would be the city council or commission for municipal electric utilities. So for the board of directors and the city commission, they are defined as approving authorities in this section of the bill, and of course the commission is our Public Utilities Commission. So these distinct regulatory regimes are reflected in the definitions and then also throughout the bill. I will tell you, we did borrow this approach from Montana. They utilized the same appropriate regulatory framework, and we thought it fit well here in South Dakota. Section 2 of the bill sets out the filing requirements of wildfire mitigation plans. And of course, the IOUs file theirs with the commission. Electric co-ops submit their plans to their board of directors for approval and publication. And municipal utilities submit their plans to their city council or commission for approval and publication. Section 3 requires a qualified utility with a published wildfire mitigation plan to submit an annual report that details the utility's compliance with its plan for the previous calendar year. Qualified utilities also must file updates to their plans at least once every 2 years. And Section 4 is, in my opinion, a very, very important section because it actually sets forth the minimum standards that must be included in a wildfire mitigation plan. There are actually 9 standards articulated in Section 4, and I'm not going to go through all of them. I would just highlight a couple of the criteria because I think they're worth noting. Wildfire mitigation plans must include identification of areas within the service territory of the qualified utility that may be subject to a heightened risk of wildfire. They must contain a description of the standards the qualified utility will use to inspect and operate its infrastructure. They must include a description of vegetation management. They must include a description of strategies for upgrades to electric facilities and preventative programs to reduce the risk of the qualified utilities' electric facilities initiating a wildfire. A plan must include a description of considerations for de-energizing power lines while balancing the risk of wildfire with the need for continued supply of electricity to a community. Restoration plans need to be included, estimated costs, community outreach efforts, and coordination with applicable state and local wildfire agencies. All standards must comply with the most recent National Electric Safety Code, and I will address that shortly. Section 5 allows the Commission to authorize cost recovery for the utilities that are under their jurisdiction. And then Section 6 deals with damages. And from a high level, this section provides that a standard of strict liability does not apply and that qualified utilities, facilities, and activities are not ultra-hazardous or abnormally dangerous. And I would tell you that that is current law. We just included it in here so it's very clear that that's what the standard is. There is a rebuttable presumption in any civil action that a valid and current mitigation plan is a reasonable and prudent mitigation of wildfire risk, but the presumption is rebuttable. Section 6 also sets out what factors a plaintiff would need to prove to overcome the presumption, and one of those would be that the qualified utility failed to substantially comply with an essential element of its wildfire mitigation plan. A plaintiff, a civil action must be commenced within 4 years. A plaintiff may recover non-economic losses if the plaintiff suffered death, visible bodily injury, smoke inhalation, or a medically verifiable bodily injury from a wildfire. The amount of damages to real property is the lesser of the cost to restore the property to its pre-wildfire condition, or the difference between the fair market value of the property before and after the wildfire. And then damages for all kinds of personal property, including livestock and growing crops, are full market value if the personal property was destroyed, and then the cost of necessary repairs if the property was damaged. And Section 7 covers subrogation. And I want to just briefly walk you through the amendment 36E, since it was so recently posted. It includes changes to the bill requested by the proponents, by us, in response to some of the points raised by opponents, and also in talking to you as legislators. And it also is the result of some rather intense negotiations with some of the opponents of the bill. We really appreciate them coming to the table to work through some of our differences. So if you look at Amendment E, on page 1, lines 21 through 22, I would advise you that this is primarily cleanup language. We think it more accurately depicts the approval and publication process of the plans. Update of the plans in Section 3. The original bill was that we would need to update our plans once every 5 years. The opponents wanted us to update them every year, and so we felt that a reasonable compromise was every 2 years. There are several changes. Section 4, we added language that requires that all standards in our plan must comply with the current version of the National Electrical Safety Code. That was, again, requested by the opponents, and we think that that is reasonable. We live by that code, and so it makes sense that that standard is the overarching standard for these other standards in our plan. If you go to Section 6 of the amendment, there are several changes to this section. And I'm on page 4, lines 9 through 11. These are truly cleanup in nature, and I'm not sure we got all the commas exactly correct, but hopefully we're working in that direction. On line 25 of page 4, we changed the statute of limitations from 3 years to 4 years, and I will tell you that that is a result of the compromise that we reached with some of the opponents. Lines 29 through 30 of page 4, the proponents, added smoke inhalation and medically verifiable bodily injuries as qualifiers to recover non-economic losses. And again, we believe that that's a fair addition. In lines 33 and 34 on page 4, the standard for potential recovery of punitive damages is changed from malice or criminal intent to willful and wanton misconduct. And this again was part of the compromise or the negotiations reached with some of the opponents. The revised language aligns with the civil litigation standard for recovery of punitive damages as it exists under South Dakota law. On page 5, lines 6 through 10, we wanted to clearly clarify that damage to personal property is recoverable under this bill. And so we added a separate paragraph to address that. We added also some additional language to the subrogation provision in Section 7 by allowing incorporation of other subrogation statutes where appropriate. So that's where we are. I hope that overview was helpful for you. I would tell you that we support this bill as amended. We've worked hard to get to this point. We're not looking for immunity. We are looking for some protections, but we're taking on a lot of accountability. We have to develop, we have to file, publish, implement, and comply with a wildfire mitigation plan. And we are willing to do that in order to protect some of the risks that we have in serving our people in South Dakota. Thank you very much. We urge you to support the bill.
All right, thank you, Ms. Rogers. Further proponent testimony. Mr. Willard.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Steve Willard, and I won't belabor the point that Darla made. I'm the lobbyist and executive director for the electric utility companies. We introduced this a year ago and pulled it ourselves. And we did that because we didn't have all the stakeholders aligned. We weren't all in agreement. So we've spent the last year grinding through this particular issue with all parties. And I think in the end we did a pretty nice job. What we had to do was sort out the advice of probably 50 attorneys, probably 80 insurance agents, and a lot of others. And so what we did is essentially took the best of the other state plans, and I'm going to call your attention to the documents portion. It's really small print. I apologize for that. But you're going to see a couple of great letters from insurance companies demanding that we do this, and because we don't really have an alternative. And you're also going to see a chart that compares the other states that have passed this. Utah was the first about 5 years ago. The other states have started to come along. If there's a trend, it's mostly they're forested states. And so they've kind of come post fires. So we had the opportunity to cherry pick the best language from the other states. We took out the more extreme elements. We took out some things that we thought made a lot of sense. 2 of the states have done emergency funds. We didn't think we had the money to do that. We didn't want to go after the customers to do that. So maybe that's somewhere down the road. But states are dealing with this across the country. It's moving this direction. So you can see by that really small print on the chart, it's got Wyoming, North Dakota, Montana, Utah, Idaho, Kansas. I put South Dakota on the end. And essentially, most of the management plans are the same. Most of the other elements are the same. So we've kind of put a little South Dakota spin on it. We like the product. I think at this moment, we've got almost everybody along with us. And it is substantially better than it arrived, like this place often does. As you go through the process, it's kind of a rock tumbler. And this came in as a fairly decent rock, and it's approaching jewel status now. So we like the bill. We appreciate the efforts of the opponents because they've made it better. We appreciate the commentary. And I wasn't sure I was being beckoned. So we appreciate your support very much on this bill this morning. I'll sure stand by for questions. I can take you to the other plans if you go down that path, but I think we've made it pretty clear. So appreciate it.
Okay, so we're going to get a copy of that chart for everybody that you were mentioning. And next, further proponent testimony. We have about 3 minutes left, so please keep it brief.
Madam Chair and members of the House Commerce and Energy Committee, my name is Walker Witt. I'm the General Manager and CEO of Black Hills Electric Cooperative, and I'm also a registered lobbyist for the Western South Dakota Rural Electric Cooperatives. South Dakota's electric cooperatives, governed by their member boards, began energizing farms, homes, ranches more than 88 years ago in the most rural and the most difficult terrain in our state. Cooperative board approval of their own wildfire mitigation plans makes sense and is necessary because the boards have a legal, financial, and ethical responsibility for protecting their members, communities, and assets of the cooperative. As locally elected representatives, co-op directors are uniquely positioned to ensure wildfire mitigation strategies are practical and affordable and aligned with the needs of the communities they serve. My co-op adopted a wildfire mitigation plan 3 years ago after 14 months of research, collaboration with the United States Forest Service, contracting with BKI Engineering, which specialized in helping develop wildfire mitigation plans for utilities. The process included an initial assessment by BKI of my co-op's wildfire preparedness and then helped us create a tailored operational policy and practice to reduce wildfire risk. The wildfire mitigation plan involves significant capital investments, including vegetative management, system hardening, sectionalizing devices, enhanced inspection and documentation, and future wildfire mitigation program as a result of an $8.5 million Department of Energy grant where we're going to partner with the School of Mines for a monitoring and mitigation program. Because these plans directly affect rates, oversight and accountability by the boards are critical. So who makes up co-op boards of directors? They actually look a lot like our citizen legislature. My co-op board is made up of a retired banker, a broadband provider technician, 2 ranchers, one of which is an assistant fire chief and member of the Custer County Fire Advisory Board and the Pennington County Fire Services Board, a retired city finance officer of Rapid City, a retired Golden West lineman, and a former insurance agency owner. Our board members live in the communities they serve and understand the local terrain, weather patterns, forestry conditions, and land use practices. Formal board approval shows that wildfire risk is not merely an operational issue, but it's a governance level priority. It creates a clear record that directors reviewed the risks, considered alternatives, and acted prudently. The last thing that a cooperative board would ever do is approve an inadequate plan that would jeopardize their own property as well as their neighbor's property and safety. I'm just going to close by saying that this legislation is critical for co-ops. You're going to hear insurance is getting much more difficult to get, and the next speaker will talk about that. We need the ability to continue to adequately insure ourselves in the event of a catastrophic fire. The 9 most Western co-ops I lobby for have a combined mileage of 25,600 miles in extremely rural and rough terrain. We only average 3 meters per mile of line throughout that 5,000 miles. That's the reason that co-ops were formed as nonprofit is because there's no profit in them. That still exists for many co-ops. There's no profit incentive to take over a co-op if it goes bankrupt because of a wildfire and we don't have coverage. This is a reliability issue as well as a liability issue, and I strongly urge and ask for your yes vote on Senate Bill 36 as amended. Thank you.
All right, we are past our 20 minutes, but I am going to allow some latitude. I know this is a very important bill with a lot of people that came to testify. We do have some time because we're waiting on the next bill. We have some people that are coming over from another committee. And so since we're here, I'm going to go ahead and take the testimony, but please keep it very brief if you can. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Phil Irwin. I'm the CEO of Federated Rural Electric Insurance Exchange. We insure electric co-ops across the country, and that's all we do. The wildfire issue has been very...
Excuse me, sir. Are you for the bill?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
very good.
Sorry about
Thank
that.
you.
I'm not a professional lobbyist, so. So anyway, one of the things that we do, we deal with reinsurers, and that's who insurance companies buy the higher level limits of liability. And we've had a real hard time with this, with the reinsurers, because they've looked at the fires from out in California from 10 plus years ago and the damages that they have caused. And they have been limiting the amount of liability we can issue to the electric co-ops, and the price has more than doubled. For some of the higher ranges, it's even substantially higher. So cost is a very big thing. We know our members across the country. We know how important those costs are. The other thing that we see is availability. And what's happened in my world, if you will, if you go back 2 years ago, we were insuring 92% of all the co-ops in the United States, electric co-ops. Today, we insure a little over 97% because our competitor lost their market. There is no availability that they could find. So we have been taking care of the new ones coming in. We also know to keep the reinsurers satisfied, we have to be addressing this issue of wildfires very seriously. And we've worked with all the states that you've heard mentioned earlier that have passed plans. And our reinsurers are very encouraged by all the activity they're seeing. They know that it's serious. My biggest fear is losing the coverage that we have fought so hard for. After big fires, a lot of times they're not ours or even electric utilities. I will get invited to Manhattan, New York, not Kansas, which is where I'm from, to discuss with what went wrong, what's happened, even though they're not our claims. And they've often asked me, why should we continue to provide this coverage to you? What's different about electric co-ops? And the biggest difference is senior leadership, the board, lives in these territories. They take a different view than maybe some of the big companies out west in California, et cetera. This is incredibly important for your communities to have this coverage, to be able to put in wildfire mitigation plans to prevent the losses. And so that's our whole goal, prevent the loss before they happen, because that's going to be in everybody's biggest interest and for safety. And so with that, I'd be happy to take any questions, but trying to keep it short, so.
All right.
Thank you.
We might call you back up for questions, but we're going to go on with proponent testimony right now. Thank you. Representative or Commissioner Nelson, welcome.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Chris Nelson, Chairman of the Public Utilities Commission. We rise in support of this legislation. This is all about risk reduction, and I'm going to talk about two of those risks. Obviously, it reduces the risk of wildfires. By utilities going through the methodical process of putting together a wildfire mitigation plan, it forces them to analyze all aspects of their facilities and their procedures to find those areas that they need to change in order to reduce the risk of wildfires, and that's something that we can all support. Secondly, it reduces financial risk for utilities, and by reducing that financial risk, and I'm talking about risk of increasing insurance rates, I'm talking about risk of unlimited damages that might have to be paid. By reducing those risks, it helps us do our job of limiting the increasing rates for electricity in the state. It helps us do our job of keeping electricity rates reasonable. With that, the only thing that I would add is that the utilities worked very closely with us as they put this bill together. And I'll tell you, the first bill they brought to us was a non-starter for us. And we went through some very intensive time of educating each other and negotiating and coming up with language that accomplishes what they need and allows us to do our job. And so with that, Madam Chair, members of the committee, I wholeheartedly ask you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other proponent testimony? Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Aaron Scheibe, I'm an attorney here in Pierre, registered lobbyist for the Clean Grid Alliance. Clean Grid is an industry trade association focused on utility issues in the upper Midwest. We have several members that have generation and transmission interests here in South Dakota. I'm just simply here to say this has been a great process. I think what's before you today is in good form and would urge you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further proponents?
Representative Mulaney, I'm actually wearing a suit and a tie for you today. So, I'm Jerome Harvey. I'm the fire administrator for Pennington County, South Dakota. My office supports 20 fire departments, 5 ambulance services, 1 search and rescue team, approximately 525 volunteer firefighters, approximately 225 career firefighters. We cover an area of approximately 60,000 square miles. I've been doing this business for 48 years, and I'm a 4th generation Harvey that's been involved in organized fire protection in the Black Hills. My area of jurisdiction does not include just the Black Hills. I don't have any comments about the liability. I'm not sure if I understand how you can get away with that, but that's a question for people a lot smarter than me. My concern about the having this legislation and going forth with it is putting some teeth into it and making sure that Commissioner Nelson has the resources to put teeth into the actual plans. And that's the meat of the whole thing. And getting the co-ops, getting the electrical providers to come talk to us. We have some of the finest people on the planet for dealing with wildland fires, and we need them to come talk to us. And if this is what it takes to get those people to come talk to us, I'm all for that. That's very much a necessary component of this. along with giving, again, Commissioner Nelson the issues of it. Don't let your PUC duck out of this thing. Make sure that they're actually spending the time with it. There's a lot involved with it as we continue to see our climate evolve here in South Dakota. The next thing you guys need to look at as far as on the horizon is, in the end of all of this, how do we pay for this? 96.6% of your fire service in South Dakota is all volunteer. That's second in the nation to the state of Delaware. Cost shifting this fire onto a local volunteer fire department like that is not going to cut it. The fire departments that we have in South Dakota are the fire departments for the state of South Dakota. At some point in time, there's got to be some kind of reckoning on how you're going to pay for all of this. So that's something for you guys to look for down the road. But as far as moving the bill forward, as long as you have teeth in the wildfire plan and mitigation, and somebody's actually checking on it, make sure that those things are actually happening, then I think it's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Further proponent testimony? That's it? Okay, we had some others that were signed up. Maybe they're not here. But with that, if there's no further proponent testimony, we did not have any proponents online. We have somebody signed up as an opponent. Right, sir? Come forward and give us your name and your testimony. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Philip Arnzen, registered lobbyist on behalf of the National Association of Mutual Insurance Companies, known as NAMIC. And we're a nationwide trade group that represents property casualty insurers of all sizes, from national carriers that are household names down to small farm mutual companies that might only cover a few counties, of which we have many that are domesticated in South Dakota and have been operating here for over 100 years. And we're in opposition to Senate Bill 36. We do appreciate some of the changes in the amendment, particularly adding the NESC standard, and then also lowering the required plan submission from 5 years down to 2. But we still have quite a few concerns on the bill, even as amended. The first one is, and again, this is a smaller concern compared to the others, but tying the NESC standard to 2023. We'd like to see it kind of be updated down the road as we go, because in 5 or 10 years, that's going to be out of date. There's going to be newer technologies, newer mitigation strategies that we would like to see in those plans. Probably the biggest concern we have, or the biggest concern we have, is this gives utilities legal protections that no other individual, business, or insurer has in South Dakota. They have the ability to basically shift or transfer almost all of the wildfire risks that they start onto individuals, businesses, and insurers in South Dakota. I mean, it is possible to bring a lawsuit against them, but again, the standards are very high, and it's going to make it difficult for insurers to offset their losses. It's going to limit their ability to use what's called subrogation, which is whenever they have a loss, they go after a party that's responsible to try to offset some of that loss. And so this is going to limit that and make it much more difficult and expensive, which could potentially put upward pressure on rates, and then also make insurers kind of relook at South Dakota and the availability of insurance here. Because if they perceive there being a large risk of wildfire and them not having the ability to offset or recoup any of those losses, there's not many options that they have to recoup those losses. And usually it's through either kind of limiting where they write or higher rates. I can't promise that's going to happen, but we do believe this would put upward pressure on rates. And then additionally, outside of insurers, individuals that don't have insurance or that are underinsured, they're going to be potentially put in a very catastrophic situation. You might have a farmer or somebody that spent their whole life, building houses, barns, tractors, acquiring livestock, and this is going to really limit their ability to be able to offset those losses if there's a wildfire. And so while I'm here to represent insurers, I do think that the committee should think about those South Dakotans that don't have insurance or that are underinsured. They might have a $500,000 house with only $100,000 in insurance. If utility starts a wildfire, then they could potentially be on the hook for that $400,000. And so we believe that's a strong concern. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, this transfers the risks. They talk about limiting their liability and not being exposed to all of these losses. Somebody is exposed to that loss. If there's $50 million in damages from a wildfire, somebody or something is paying that $50 million in damages. And so the discussion needs to focus on who do you want to be responsible for that and who should be liable and be incentivized to try to prevent that sort of disaster from happening. And so for those reasons we think the mitigation plan should have more up-to-date NESC standards moving forward. We do appreciate them adding that, and then also giving them legal protection that shifts liability onto individuals, businesses, and insurers in the state of South Dakota.
All right, thank you for that testimony. Any other opponents? Seeing no opponents, we will move to rebuttal.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thanks for giving us a fair hearing, for letting us have a little extra time so we could get all our speakers to come and testify before you. I think if you went through what was said today and looked at everything, we did our very best to get all parties involved. We did. And the last opponent, we're still open if we want to do something for next year. We're not shutting the door on anything. So we're doing our very best. This is a very important issue, and we ask for your favorable vote. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. With that, we will move to questions from the committee. Representative Weisgram.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for Mr. Irwin. Thank you. Mr. Irwin, so looks to me like there's a tightrope of trying to craft legislation that allows the insurance companies a little leeway to subrogate and our utilities to get insurance.
Right.
The last speaker tended to say subrogation was going to be a really high bar. Can you make any comments towards that?
Yeah, and no offense, we're actually a member of NAMIC also. The subrogation issue that I think is relevant to this bill here is subrogation from fire started by electrical equipment, not lightning, campfires, et cetera. They all happen too. And the dollars associated with the electrical side are not that huge in comparison to lightning and other types of campfires, et cetera, and that stuff. So there is subrogation out there, but since I write basically all the co-ops, definitely all 100% of the ones here in South Dakota, it's been very minimal dollars we paid out in subrogation through that course of action. So it's, probably less than, over the last 5 years, less than $1 million. So from that aspect, and that's just for the co-ops.
All right, Representative Baumler.
For Ms. Pullman Rogers. So with the amendment, the procedures and standards under this section comply with the 2023 National Electrical Safety Code. With the safety code being updated every 3 years, why was 2023 used and not the current?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Darla Pullman Rogers, lobbyist for SDREA. It's my understanding that 2023 is the current one right now. It has not been updated. And the reason that we put a year in the statute is because that's required in South Dakota. You have to put a specific year. So we'll have to come back and update that as on a go-forward basis.
Further questions? Representative Mullally.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had the same question on for Ms. Rogers regarding the 2023 and why it doesn't say current. You can get with me later on what the codified law is in South Dakota that requires you to put the year on it. So, but I did have a question on Section 2 for Ms. Rogers. Section 2, line 1. On page 2, it says a qualified utility that is not an electric cooperative or a municipal utility may submit a wildfire mitigation. What happens if, well, first off, what is a qualified utility that is not a cooperative or a municipal utility?
Madam Chair, Darla Pullman Rogers on behalf of SDREA. I don't mean to put words in someone else's mouth, but an electric utility or a qualified utility that is not an electric co-op or municipal utility would be an IOU, investor-owned utility.
Okay, thank you for that. A follow-up, Madam Chair. So, is that qualified, the IOU? Is a may, and the electric cooperative and the municipal cooperative is a must? I'm trying to figure out if there's different qualifications. One is a may.
If you, Madam Chair, if you go down to line 15, Representative Malali, it says a qualified utility that is an electric cooperative or a municipal utility may submit a wildfire mitigation plan. So it's the same standard for both.
Okay, follow up, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering why it was a may and not a must.
The whole purpose of this bill is to really encourage utilities to have wildfire mitigation plans. If they do not choose to invest in incorporating and implementing a plan, they're not going to get the protections that are afforded in the bill. And so the bill is an encouragement for those utilities to do that. The goal is that all of them will at some point in time.
Just one more follow-up. Thank
All right,
you,
go
Madam
ahead.
Chair. Okay, so let me understand this. If a IOU or an electric co-op or a municipal utility decides not to, but on each side of their jurisdiction, those particular companies decide to opt in on the mitigation plan, what happens if the fire goes through all three?
Madam Chair, if the fire goes through a utility that doesn't have a plan and a utility that does have a plan, the utility with the plan, as long as that utility is complying with its plan, that utility would have the protections that are in the bill. The other utility would not.
Okay. Representative Duffy?
Thank you, Chair. Just, I have a few questions, but I'll start with just this one. The PUC can authorize the costs of putting this plan together into the rate base or the cost of doing business. So we are paying this. We are actually paying. The customers are actually paying to put this plan together. Do I understand that right?
Madam Chair, that would be part of the Commission's role in regulating the rates of the IOUs. And so if those were legitimate costs, they would need to be approved by the Commission as part of the rate-making process for an IOU.
Okay. Any further questions from the committee? Representative Yuri Balk.
Okay. I think this question's for Darla, but anyone can answer if so needed. So for a co-op, they will be submitting it to their board. Is it required anywhere to have like a third party approve that or look at that and make sure that it's following the national standards?
Madam Chair, it is the approval authority for the cooperatives is their board of directors. But I would tell you, and maybe I phone a friend on this as well, but I will tell you that these boards are very, very well informed. I mean, they're not walking into this cold. I think Mr. Witt told you that the process that they go through, and so they are well-versed and qualified to be able to approve or not approve the plans.
Okay, we'll go to Representative Schwanz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question for Mr. Harvey, if he's still here. Thank you, Mr. Harvey, for coming. I just want to ask a very simple question. How many fires do we typically mitigate a year in the Black Hills?
How many fires we typically mitigate in the Black Hills? I can tell you my experience is, as far as ability to control and maintain a fire, I can't give you the exact number that are actually mitigated. I can tell you, though, I have seen fire starts by man-made devices, including power lines, and areas that were not mitigated at that time. Yes, did they contribute to the fire progressing? Did it contribute to fire growth? Absolutely. So that's the concern that, again, it goes back to that I have, Madam Chairman, is the fact that the plan and the follow-through of the plan actually has teeth to it. As far as the actual numbers, you can certainly get those from your South Dakota wildland fire. But we typically see, on an average, in our area, we actually, probably half of our load is probably wildland fires. In the county, we run about 6,500 calls, probably half of those as far as fires is wildland-related type calls.
All right, any other questions? Representative Weisgram. Oh, sorry. We'll take her follow-up, then we'll go to you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, first of all, the fact that South Dakota has an all-volunteer fire department, I just give kudos to all of those men and women that are out there constantly fighting that. And I just want to say thank you for being here today.
Okay, Representative Weisgram.
Thank you. Just a final question. I see Mr. Mattson in the room, and I know we had some earlier conversations. May I ask him to come forward? Madam Chair. So, Mr. Mattson, you and I have had earlier conversations, and I've had constituents on both sides of Senate Bill 36. I just want to, seemingly you represented the insurance companies, and I know this has been a tightrope to get insurance companies to be able to insure co-ops, and yet you're concerned about subrogation. Can you tell me the status of where you're at with this amendment?
Madam Chair. Yeah, certainly. That's a great question. I actually signed up as an other thinking that I'd be able to testify, so I'm glad you asked me the question because I do have a couple of things to say about that. First of all, I think every word in this document has been vetted. There are people on both sides of just about every word in this document. It has required a great deal of give and take. It has required a great deal of input, a great deal of explaining, and there are some people on this committee who have been involved in, to a great extent, one of them may be the chair of this committee, in helping find a solution that fits everybody. And yesterday, like similar to like in a mediation, you do the 90% of your work in the last 10% of the time, but yesterday we really were grinding it to get it done, and that's why there was even a delay of getting the amendment in here for this committee on time. But I have to say that I think everybody gave what they needed to give, and I think that everybody retained what they needed to retain. Is it what I wanted totally? No, but I don't think there's anybody in this room that can say that. But I think there's really been a really hard, good effort to get where we are today. And the list of people that I need to thank that got me where I am is very long, and I think there's others in the room that can say that. So is it perfect? It depends on your perspective. But I would say most people in this room would say they're satisfied. And if there are things that need to be fixed down the road, we can fix those down the road. But for now, I think it's a pretty good document.
Representative Uri Bulk.
The previous speaker talked about that the plan and the follow through of the plan need to have teeth to it.
Yes.
Could you speak to that and where you see if that's, occurring or?
Yes, that was one of my main concerns, and maybe Steve Siegel may want to answer, from the trial lawyer's perspective. But in speaking for him and for the insurance companies, that was one of our main concerns. And our main concern was if there was wrongdoing by a utility, would we be able to collect for that? And there are avenues. There are avenues that are there. We have given them, not given them, but we've let it be retained in the document that there's a presumption in their favor. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that if you're a target defendant like utilities sometimes are, you need that kind of protection. So this is a compromise, but I think if people are really wrong, that they have avenues, and it still provides protections for the utilities. So thank you.
All right. Further questions? Representative Duffy, go ahead.
Madam Chairman.
Can you restate your name, please?
Jerome Harvey, Fire Administrator, Pennington County, South Dakota.
Just for those of us in the western part of the state, I think you would be an expert in this thing. Several years ago, we all went out, not all of us, a bunch of us went out into the woods and looked at the way the forest was being maintained. And there was a group at that time that said it was not being managed properly, and then there was another group that said we're over cleaning it up. So where do you sit on that? Is the forest being cared for? Because the utilities can only do so much. They got to do their part. But if the forest is a mess, that's a different issue.
Excellent question. My viewpoint as far as management of the Black Hills itself, every time anybody asks me that question about it, a couple things is number one is the Black Hills has always been an experimental area for the rest of the country. The first federal timber sale was on Jim Crook. And that's so there's a lot of stuff that goes on here that initially happens here, then either becomes a good thing and gains traction in the rest of the country, or it doesn't. If you look at the one of the benefits that we have for the Black Hills is we have excellent documentation from Illingsworth as far as what the forests look like prior to Euro-American settlement. And through the Custer expedition and then the follow-up expedition of 1875 of Colonel Dodge's expedition, where he clearly states, and there's two things that always impressed me about what Colonel Dodge said. One is his most idyllic summary he'd ever had, and he was writing very much as a perspective of a Civil War veteran. The other thing that he made a statement about was that the Black Hills would never support a timber industry for fully 1/3 of the Black Hills is grasslands. My own opinion, again, fourth generation here, and seeing this and seeing photos of where my great-grandfather homesteaded and knowing the fires that he worked on back into the 1880s, fires in 1910, fires in 1911. My grandfather, I've done quite a bit of work on the fires of 59 myself, and I fully believe that the Black Hills is converting itself back to a degree back to grasslands. And the work that I know that I've been involved with as far as mitigation and as far as treatment of the forest itself is we're ahead of the rest of the country. And I sincerely believe that, and I've seen that. The gentleman back here brought up about California. The first time I ever heard it, as California goes, so goes the country. And that that wave has hit here, you know, as far as what this becoming the Senate bill and the things that you guys are dealing with. But as far as treatment on the forest, ability to gain access and attack a fire, and just the cooperation agreements and everything else we have in place, and the mitigation is in my opinion, far ahead of everybody else.
Thank you. With that, unless we have one last question, I think we will wrap up our committee questions. Seeing none, we will move on to committee discussion. Discussion from the committee.
Madam Chair, I move to pass.
Second.
Okay. Let's wait, see if there's any discussion first. Anybody? Okay. I would just say I'm really thankful for the very hard work that went into this from both sides. And I know you guys have been here late and really worked hard, and it's really great to see something come out because we see how important this is as well. I was going to mention a few things that I liked in the changes, but I think we've all heard what we need to hear today. So with that, we do have a motion. Representative Greenfield, motion to pass. Second by Representative Baumiller. And discussion on your motion.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I think you pretty well summarized everything that I was going to say. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Representative Greenfield. So we have a Okay, Representative Yuri Bulk.
I just, I do appreciate all the great work, and this is a tricky issue, and I am nervous in the future for when something happens and, how we look back on this bill. But it does seem needed. It seems really required. I have to just point out the moment that we're in, right, where we have to be reactionary to the environmental and climate changes that are occurring. And so I hope that we are also not only just reactionary, but we're also trying to, address the actual problem that is causing the situation in the first place. So with that, I will be supporting the motion.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion do pass and a second on Senate Bill 36 as amended. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representatives Elward, excused. Duffy.
Aye.
Greenfield.
Aye.
Kaiser.
Aye.
Mullally.
Aye.
Knowles.
Aye.
Peterson, excused. Schwanz.
Aye.
Shurma.
Aye.
Yuri Balk.
Aye.
Weisgram.
Aye.
Baumüller.
Aye.
Lems.
Aye.
Madam Chair, 11 yea, 2 excused.
Having received a majority of the members elect, the motion to pass Senate Bill 36 as amended to the floor carries. All right, and I do not think we're going to put this one on consent. Is that okay? Okay. All right, thank you all. We are going to be at ease for a few minutes. If anybody needs to step out. So, okay. And then we will see you back here, let's say 10 minutes.
SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder.
Okay. House Commerce and Energy will reconvene. We will move on to Senate Bill 88. Clarify the procedure for the potential condemner to examine real property absent of the property owner's permission. Do we have any proponent testimony?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Representative Carla Lems from District 16 here with, like you said, Senate Bill 88, an act to clarify the procedure for a potential condemner to examine real property absent the property owner's permission. So I'm just going to move right away to why do we need this bill? Like, we should always ask that question, right? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience. I really haven't shared too much in the last few years about my own experience with the survey law that was put in place in 2016. So I believe it was the fall of 2022. I was not a legislator yet, but I was going to be coming I was going to be coming in January of 2023. But I got a call from my husband, and he had been out hunting on an acreage site, just an abandoned acreage site that we own. And the surveyors came along, and he was like, what in the world? Now, we had gotten a letter about a survey that may be happening. It was a vague time period. We didn't really know exactly what piece of ground they were going to be coming to, but they had followed the law in that way, which we have now corrected some of those things. But we did not expect that they were coming that day, and we did not expect they were coming to that place. And so we ended up calling the sheriff, and the sheriff did come out. And it ended up in a lawsuit, which is the same as many other landowners across the state that you probably haven't heard about. We're going to hear from Jared Bosley after a little bit. And, he has become the face of this, probably not by choice, but he has become the face of this problem, if you will, in our state in the last few years. But there have been multitudes of people that have also been affected that you probably have never heard their name. So with that, this bill will halt the overreach that was caused by that bill that was actually put in place in 2016. And then since then, we made some changes in 2024 to that same section of code. This is going to help us get it right. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the history of surveying for these kinds of projects. Now, we're talking about projects that have to be permitted under the PUC, that have the right to take eminent domain. So we're talking about big projects, right? Not your normal surveying if you're going to build a house or, you're shooting, levels and all that kind of thing. We're talking about the big projects. And so it's from the history of our state back into before we were a state, into Dakota Territory, we've always had historically strong landowner rights in our state of South Dakota. But in 2016, there was a survey law that was put in place, and you can find it under 21-35-31, and on the bottom there you'll see 2016. You can click on that. And what it said was projects that require a siting permit with the PUC that have the right to eminent domain for a public use may cause an examination and survey without permission. So since that enactment way back here in 2016, the law had hardly ever been used up until about 2022. So what happened is that citizens like myself were caught unaware because we really didn't even know that this law existed. So there was a lot of confusion that was happening. I actually got quite a few phone calls from people because they knew I had run for office and, they had heard about it. Neighbors call neighbors. And so there were quite a few people that were concerned about this and wanted to know what they could do. So then we saw the court challenges start happening, and you guys all heard about those. There were literally hundreds of families that were engaged in lawsuits over this issue. They collectively spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of their money over about a 3-year time period. And so while all this was going on, so this was all based on that 2016 law, while all this was going on, we enacted a new law in 2024, and that was House Bill 1185. And one thing that new law added to our existing law was a $500 fee for a survey. So all the lawsuits that were still swirling around, and we got to 2024, and then they rose all the way up to the Supreme Court. So in August, so we passed that law in March of 2024. In August of 2024, that decision came down. It was a unanimous decision that stated that the invasive style surveying that had been seen with some of the landowners, and we're talking about the deep trenching, the boring, that is unconstitutional. Also, it stated that a jury must establish just compensation, and so that $500 payment needs to be taken out of our existing law as well. So with this guidance, this bill establishes that invasive style surveying is not allowed and that a jury must establish just compensation. A survey that requires a walk-on or walk-around or minimal soil disturbance, that is still allowed. So this bill just memorializes what the Supreme Court decision was within our statute. It's a great bill. It should bring clarity and hopefully save South Dakotans heartache and future lawsuits. And it will also bring us pride to once again shore up our property rights for our South Dakota citizens. It's a common sense bill. And with that, I would let other proponents speak to the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lebs. Further proponent testimony.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Amanda Radke. I'm here representing myself. It was 2023, and I came as an individual landowner, showed up to Pierre, and it was this committee room was the first time I testified on a bill when a private out-of-state foreign-backed pipeline came into the state of South Dakota and was a bad actor, mistreated a lot of people. One of those families was Tara and Jared Bosley, which you are going to hear from later today. Hearing their story is painful for them to relive and so many of us who know and love them. Imagine being a woman in a shower alone at home and you hear a stranger in your house Then you watch that stranger walk across your yard and go into your private shed. Then a company comes and they invade your property on a 104 day when the wind is blowing 40 miles an hour. And you watch as this company drives through your shelter belt, destroying trees, drives through your cattle yards, goes into your field, tramples those plants, and bores a 90-foot hole for a pipeline that was supposed to be 4 foot deep. Your kids are there crying. They feel helpless. They feel scared. They feel unsafe on their own property. Now imagine having to take that all the way to the courts and through the legal system. Thankfully, our South Dakota Supreme Court ruled unanimously that this type of invasive surveying against the will of a landowner is unconstitutional and unlawful. Today's bill, SB 88, seeks to clean up a law that's on the books that goes against that constitutional ruling. So SB 88 seeks to align state statute with that constitutional ruling. It passed unanimously through committee and the Senate floor, and I urge your favorable consideration of SB 88 to finally right some wrongs, give some justice, and allow landowners and homeowners to rest assured that they can feel safe, protected, and secure on their own land and in their own homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Radke.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. Melissa McCauley, registered lobbyist for Dakota Rural Action. Dakota Rural Action rises to support Senate Bill 88. DRA has been actively involved in South Dakota impacted by recent pipeline proposals since fall of 2021. When landowners first received letters from pipeline companies, we lived through the experiences of invasive surveying, the following court litigations, the victory of the South Dakota Supreme Court, and also the false solution of House Bill 1185 in 2024. The events of the past years related to the invasive surveying were all documented through media and through the courts, and previous legislative attempts to solve the problem missed the mark. The core problem was not whether or not landowners were being paid upfront for unconstitutionally invasive surveys, but the invasiveness itself. The bill sets the recent South Dakota Supreme Court decision into statute, protecting future landowners and communities from the bad faith tactics that were experienced in recent years. And with that, I do ask you to support Senate Bill 88.
Thank you, Ms. McCauley, for the proponent testimony.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Tara Bosley, and I'm here representing myself. Sorry, get my notes. As many of you may know, my family and I experienced the type of invasive surveying that this bill would prevent. Your home is supposed to be your safe place where you feel comfortable, protected. For my family, we no longer feel safe at home. After a private company invaded our home, our shop, cattle yards, shelter belts, fields against our wishes, I'll never forget the look on my kids' faces that day. We had to sit back and helplessly watch as strangers entered our farm, our life's work, and did whatever they wanted despite our objections. This is a nightmare that we still live every day. Thank you for listening, and again, I ask for your yes vote on SB 88.
Thank you, Ms. Bosley.
Madam Chair, Honorable Committee, my name is Mike Klipfel, McPherson County, South Dakota, and I'd like to say I was there that day when Jared's and Tara's farm got invaded. The Sheriff's Department came out to sequester Jared and his family to their farm while this invasive survey took place with a tracked vehicle that drove through his farmyard. I followed it, through his trees, into his soybean field, and then poked a hole in the ground 90 feet deep. By the way, they never have returned that soil that was taken that day either. They took that soil without permission. Jared didn't give permission to any of this. Then after they were done with that, they drove out of that soybean field and far into a cornfield nearby and drilled another hole 90 feet deep. And I have it all on this phone if you want to see it, but it was a horribly unfortunate situation. But what was even more unfortunate is when I watched Tara and her daughter cling to each other in abject fear of what was going on that day, it made me sick. This is going on in South Dakota. This is something that should go on in perhaps North Korea, Russia, Cuba. But we have the authorities out there keeping these people like caged animals inside their farmyard because the judge said you can't be more than 300 feet from that rig. So I implore you, if you have any idea or not on SB 88, that you pass this bill and send it to the House or the Senate for its passage there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klipfel. Further proponent testimony?
Madam Chair, Senator Mark Lopke, District 23. Well, I was also personally at Mr. Bosley's farm that day, and I, as a farmer myself, that was probably one of the most frustrating experiences that I've ever witnessed in my entire life. You're used to seeing that kind of thing on television, but to see it in real life, I mean, there's just nothing like it. No picture can do it justice. No video can do it justice. And just a little bit of background on that, because what I want this committee to realize that while the severity of that particular incident was the worst of the worst, it was far from the only place that that type of activity took place. And it was early on in 2023 when about 150 landowners combined together to challenge the constitutionality of that after having received the initial letters of that surveying was going to take place without permission, something at the time that we didn't even realize was on the books. It was in 2016 when this body originally put that language in place, and it had never been utilized in the state of South Dakota until that particular point. But it's not like it was a random place like I referred to. It was clear across the state. I want to say that they sent out over 300 letters informing people that they were coming and there was nothing that you could do about it. And so at that initial court hearing, there was probably about 120 farmers, ranchers, landowners from across South Dakota sitting in the courtroom when the ruling came down that surveying was going to take place no matter what. And Mr. Bosley was the one that was at the lead of it. And something that's always stuck with me since was the judge admonished everybody in that room and said that if anybody causes any interference with these surveyors, you will all be held in contempt of court. I quite frankly couldn't believe that we were being spoken to like that. Then the event at Jared's happened. There wasn't anything that we could do about it. We called law enforcement, and they were there to protect the company from the landowners while you had a restraining order against you on your own property, and you had to move away from them. Imagine if you were in your home and somebody's walking at you, and you got to walk the other direction. That's just not right. But ultimately what happened was we persevered. We stuck with it. We spent 3 years in the court system, over $750,000 over that time, to end up where we are at today. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously in August of 2024 that particular style of surveying is unconstitutional. However, the existing law that still exists today, which is obviously unconstitutional per the guidance from the Supreme Court, still exists. And that's what Senate Bill 88 is doing. It's bringing that law in alignment with the Supreme Court ruling. We shouldn't have to have South Dakotans spend years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in the court system when we're elected that we can do it with the stroke of a pen. I'd encourage your support on Senate Bill 88.
Thank you, Senator. Further in the room, proponent testimony.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Sarah Stever, members. I just am giving a quick Me Too in support of Tara. There's something that was taken away from their family that should never happen to another family in the state of South Dakota. We have the opportunity to address this today, so please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stever. I believe we have one more in the room.
Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members. Katie Sieverding with the South Dakota Stock Growers Association, here for a Me Too as well. I do believe you received an email from our executive director kind of highlighting everything and why we support the bill, so I'll just say Me Too. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Sieverding. I believe that we have, are you signed in? Okay.
My name is Michael Boyle. I'm a pastor from Parkston, South Dakota, and I just want to say Me Too.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Me too.
Thank you. State your name. I know who you are, but the people online don't.
Representative Liz May, District 27.
Thank you, Representative May.
Good morning. Senator Mark Lopke, District 23. Just kidding. Representative Spencer Goss, District 23. Me too.
Thank you, Representative. Okay, we will move on to online testimony. Mr. Bosley, can you hear us?
Gotcha. Just
Okay,
trying to get
proceed.
everything on here. Okay, well, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jared Bosley. I'm representing myself, and I am speaking in favor of this bill today. As you guys have heard, what my family have went through. Put yourself in my shoes and be the man of the house and listen to your wife, how scared they are. It's not how stuff is supposed to be. We have the chance now to change and align the stuff with the Constitution, like the Supreme Court said, and prevent any future things like this ever happening to anybody else. I don't wish this on my worst enemies. That track machine unloaded. They went through 4 sets of gates, drove over freshly planted trees, and drove into them fields and dug those 90-foot deep holes. And by the way, those 90-foot deep holes now are just a bare spot in that field. That ground does not even grow a weed. It's just a bare spot that reminds you of every time you go through that field. These things are unacceptable in South Dakota. Like Mike said, maybe expect this someplace else, Russia or North Korea, something like that, but not here in South Dakota. So let's, I urge you to pass this and prevent any future hurt for any families or any landowners, property owners. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bosley. We have one more online testimony. Mr. Fishback, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are live. Go.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Ed Fishback. I'm a farmer near Millette in Spain County. And I, rather than repeat a lot of what went on that day, I'll try to be as brief as I can. But I was the very first one there that day because Jared was off of his farm doing what most farmers do. They're working. He was hauling soybeans that day. So I received a call because see if I could get there as quick as I could because Tara and her daughter were there alone. This company had shown up unannounced, as was stated earlier, in a 104-degree day. And as I approached the farm, one thing that hasn't been mentioned here yet today, which is really important, I observed a half a mile from the farm as I came in, armed security guards had the total farm surrounded from every direction. And I knew then the farm was under siege. And without going into all the other details that everybody else has mentioned that day, when Jared finally got back to the farm, he couldn't go anywhere near within 300 feet. So I had to keep him across the road and near his shop so he didn't get in trouble with the restraining order that had placed on him. And I want you to know one thing that Jared said to me when he got back to the farm. He looked me in the eye and he said, Ed, he had tears in his eyes and he said, look what they're doing to my farm. They're destroying everything I've worked for. And I had tears in my eyes and I looked back at him and I said, Jared, I understand. But someday I really believe in my heart that there'll be a remedy for this. Well, members of the committee, today, I believe, is the remedy. And you have that opportunity to provide that remedy. The Supreme Court has already done that in case law. All we're asking for today is that you support Senate Bill 88 to make it in codified law so that this never happens to anyone ever again. And so with that, I ask again your support for SB 85 with no amendments, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Fishback. I believe that concludes our proponent testimony. Do we have any opponent testimony? Seeing none, and no need for a rebuttal. Can we move on to committee questions?
Madam Chair,
Representative Shorma,
for the prime, please.
state your question.
Can you, it says in section 1, item 3, make a payment to the owner or provide sufficient security for the payment for any actual damage done to the property. Is that in advance of the survey, and how is that determined?
Representative Lems?
Well, I would try to answer this. So that, I believe, is an agreement between the property owner and the company. And sometimes there's an appraisal company that gets in the middle of that, but that's to be negotiated between them. And then if there is actual damage done and they can't come to an agreement, then they would go to court. Is my understanding. Maybe the prime wants to. Do you want to answer that? Okay. Can he? I'm going to hand the baton off. Oh, okay.
So the payment that would
Can
be...
you state your name?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Senator Mark Lopke, District 23. So the payment would be obtained for the damages that would be at the causation of the surveys. But per the Supreme Court's ruling, the $500 was in violation of the Constitution because any form of compensation in that manner, being a taking was taken place, has to be established by a jury. This body cannot set a dollar amount or a payment for prior.
Thank you, Senator.
Follow up?
Follow up, please. Thank you.
Is your mic on?
Now it is. Sorry. I'm just a little concerned. Make a payment or provide sufficient security. So security is in advance as opposed to post destruction of property or what have you, isn't it?
Senator Lapke?
So a security in this case is basically, if you see the contracts themselves, they're going to have to carry a sufficient amount of insurance liability to protect from those damages not ever being recouped.
Thank you. Further questions of the committee?
One follow-up, please.
Granted.
I guess that would be more for comments later. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions of the committee? Seeing none, we will move on to committee comments or discussion.
Go ahead.
Representative Schwanz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank the brave people that came up today and told their story. It saddens my heart that this happens in South Dakota, and it saddens my heart that this has really happened to any of our constituents or people, citizens within South Dakota. So I will be in support of this bill.
Thank you. Further comments? Seeing none, we will move. Oh, I did not see you. Representative Greenfield.
Thank you. I'm feeling slimmer. Thank you. I just wanted to say about 5 years ago was the first time I met Senator Lapke. And we discussed, what seemingly at that time was a problem. And little did we know it would ever escalate into all of this. But in the meantime, there were other people in my area also that had this happen. And of course, they were told that these people were just out searching for arrowheads, etc. And, you wondered why all the equipment was out there just to search for arrowheads. So it escalated. It got to this. I had every faith in the world that it would be, that there'd be a solution to it. And I think at state level, this is a good solution, and I certainly will be supporting this.
Thank you, Representative. Further
Madam Chair?
comments? Representative Shorma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to share some comments, and believe me, this is meant to be in a positive light. My heart aches for those affected families that were impacted by this. It should not happen that way in the United States of America, and I would defend your position to have control over what happens on your land. I feel a need to remind the folks here and online that I worked with a good share of legislators in the Senate and the House in 2024 to provide landowner protections of various types, including the House Bill 1185 with respect to surveying and so on. Now, that doesn't mean all of that stuff ended up staying in place, but I voted for those things in 2024, and we passed them, as did the majority of the House and the Senate and the governor. Now, this isn't sour grapes. This is the citizens then voted to overturn 201 in an election in 2024. I believe that majority of those citizens were unaware of the protections that were in that legislation for landowners. I know that eminent domain was talked about, and I'm not going to get into whether it was in the bill or not. It's not important for today's discussion. However, I will tell you that in my opinion, the survey things that we fought for in the legislature were good bills. They were good bills then, and this is a good bill now. So I'm going to be supporting this bill because my position in landowner protection hasn't changed since then. And I appreciate your time coming in today, and I hope we can get this passed. Thank you.
The chair will entertain a motion. Representative Knowles.
I move to pass.
We have a motion do pass by Representative Knowles, seconded by Representative Kaiser. This is a roll comments of your motion.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I just want to thank the folks for coming in today and sharing your testimony. It's really a horrific situation, but this is an easy bill today to vote on. It's cleaning up language that our Supreme Court has ruled unconstitutional, which was also a part of that 201 Landowner Bill of Rights package. Part of that was unconstitutional, along with interfering with our private property rights, which is why the people of this state voted it down, just for the record, to be very clear on that. But this bill is cleaning up our codified law. Our South Dakota citizens should not have to go look up a court case to know that this is no longer legal here. So I'd encourage your yes vote today. Thank you.
Further comments?
Chair.
Representative Mullally.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also will be supporting this bill because it introduces clear procedural safeguards, and it aligns with our Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, as well as Article 6, subsection 13 of the South Dakota Constitution, I believe it is, which prohibits the taking and damaging of private property without just compensation. And it reduces our government overreach, adds due process, and it protects landowners' rights. So I appreciate the sponsors for bringing this bill. It's about time.
Thank you. With that, Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Representatives Elward, excused. Duffy?
Aye.
Pardon?
Aye.
Thank you. Greenfield?
Aye.
Kaiser?
Aye.
Mullally?
Aye.
Knowles?
Aye.
Peterson, excused. Schwanz?
Aye.
Shorma?
Aye.
Uribalk?
Aye.
Weisgram?
Aye.
Lems?
Aye.
Baumler?
Aye.
Madam Chair, we have 11 yea, 2 excused.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Having received a majority of the members-elect, motion carries. Senate Bill 88 will go to the floor with the due pass recommendation. That will not be going on consent. Okay. That is the last bill that we have on the agenda for today. Does anyone have anything for the good of the cause? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. We will have 2 bills on Monday. So I have a motion by Representative Wisegram to adjourn, second by Representative Uribolk. This is a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. We are adjourned.
SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder.